Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews. Today we are going to take a look at this 4-pack of dinosaur figures that I recently found at a local K-Mart. It was actually on sale, so I got this for about $9 at K-Mart. If you happen to have one in your area, it may not be a bad choice to go search these out because they actually look pretty cool, but just not over-the-top amazing or anything like that. I guess we won't really know how cool they look until we get them out of the package, but for right now, I'm thinking they look alright. It is actually made by a company called Kid Galaxy, which you can see down here in the corner. On the box, of course, they've stolen an image of the Papo running green T-Rex. And on this side, we've got a stolen image of the Schleich green T-Rex. But the box overall is pretty nice looking. It's not anything amazing, but it's not bad. On the back, we've got some info on the actual dinosaurs included. As you can see, we've got a Stegosaurus, and it does give you some information about the species itself. Then we've got Dimetrodon, Giganotosaurus, and Argentinosaurus, which I think is fairly strange looking for an Argentinosaurus. I think you would have been better off just calling that an Apatosaurus, but, you know, it's whatever. On the side of the box, we've actually got some images here of, I guess, some other figures that are released by them, and I would really like to see this one in person sometime because that really looks quite awesome. And there's, of course, an Allosaurus, it looks like, and then the same image on the other side. Unfortunately, these figures are actually kind of hard for me to come by. I can't really seem to locate them for sale anywhere online other than eBay, and eBay seems pretty high priced for this stuff. But I don't know, maybe I'll keep searching for them, find some other sets that they've released and review those as well, because this one looks fairly cool. But again, like I said earlier, we won't really know just how nice they are until we get them out of the box and actually look at them, so let's do that now. So here they are out of the box now, and I've actually picked them up and looked at them a little bit here, and they seem like they're fairly well made, especially the, in quotation marks, Argentinosaurus, which, that's quite cool. It actually has the name on the bottom of the dinosaur. But again, like I said, they feel pretty solid. They feel nicely made. They don't feel cheap like cheap plastic or anything, which is definitely a plus. That's kind of what I expected, but they're definitely exceeding my expectations as far as the material that they have used to make them. But again, we won't really know just how nice they are until we take a closer look. So let's do that now. So we'll start with the Giganotosaurus just because it's honestly the one that I was the most excited about. Kind of the reason that I really wanted this package, just because this Giganotosaurus here, this figure itself, really looks a lot like this image here that I was kind of a big fan of. I've seen in so many books and stuff over the years, and I was really quite interested to get a figure of that Giganotosaurus, and I think this one looks very similar. Same style paint scheme, and the sculpt looks very similar, so that's a very cool similarity that they've got going on. Probably the inspiration for this figure itself. But if we take a look at the actual head sculpt of the Giganotosaurus, it's not half bad. It's not overly detailed and beautifully detailed like you would see on a Papo, Safari, LTD, Schleich, you know, anything like that, Collect A. But it's really nice, I mean, for the most part. You see the detail around the eye is actually quite nicely done, and the eye itself actually has a nice gloss to it, which is a plus and something I didn't really expect. There's no sloppiness, really. The eye doesn't really look to be looking forward. He's kind of looking behind. Like maybe he's paranoid and thinks someone's following him and doesn't want to make it noticeable that he's looking. But at the same time, I mean, the paint around the eye isn't terribly placed. It looks alright. The actual teeth are a like yellowish off-white color, which is good to have a realistic looking coloration for the teeth. You can see that they're a little sloppily painted, but it's not overly terrible. And considering the price, I'm not surprised that there would be a little bit of sloppiness, but again, it's not that bad. The tongue itself looks very odd because it's very high and kind of looks super thick, but it's got a nice pinkish coloration and some fairly decent sculpt work and detail on the tongue, so I guess that's a plus even though the tongue does look quite strange. You can see that the majority of the head is like a greenish color, but then right here in this little crest area it gets to like a light gray, and then the eye has kind of a reddish brown around it with the reddish brown eye itself. And then as we start to run down the neck, you can see some pretty nice sculpt work, some nice skin folds as you come down the neck. The spikes up here on the top and the osteoderms and everything are also all colored with that grayish color, and they look pretty nice as well. You get down into the shoulder blade, you can see the shoulder blade. When we move down, you can see that the sculpt work is fairly basic as far as the small, minute details like the scaling and everything, but it doesn't look that bad. The hand transitions to a brownish color down here by the nails, and that's pretty much the entire color of the hand and nails and everything. It's all that brown, like a burnt umber type brown. You can kind of get an idea and a sense of the musculature here of the arm, and that's a definite plus. You can see the rib cage as we move back up into the stomach. That is nicely elaborated from the skin. So there is some fairly decent detail included in this. You can kind of see the skin bunching up here as the left leg is pushing up into the body. Some nice skin folding and wrinkling of the skin right here behind the leg. You can come down into the thigh and get a nice sense of the musculature of the thigh there. Beautiful kneecaps, nicely sculpted calf muscles. The feet look kind of big. They look a little weird to me. I'm not really sure why. They just look like they're flat, like maybe his feet got ran over by a car and just squished them all completely down into pancakes. But they overall are sculpted fairly nicely, even with the awkward look of them. And the nails look pretty nice. There's no sloppiness or anything. But again, they haven't gone out of their way to actually paint the nails. They just basically give it that brownish coloration from a certain point around the ankle area. And then it transitions all the way down here into the foot. And the feet and nails are all that same one brown coloration. But it still looks pretty nice. As you move back up here into the leg, you can really see those nice skin folds behind the leg, and the underneath actually has some pretty nice detail as well. And then we run out the length of the tail, and again it's a mixture of that green with this light kind of a yellowish brown underbelly, and then you've got that gray kind of spiking going on up here at the top of the tail. That actually doesn't really run all the way out, it kind of just gives up a little way out, but overall, I mean, it's not half bad looking. This side also looks pretty much the same. Nice sculpt work again here on the head. It looks pretty decent aside from the eye that's staring behind it. There are those skin folds and wrinkling of the skin in the neck region. Nicely sculpted hands once again. They look quite good. You can again take note of the rib cage there, and this one actually looks a little more subtle with the way it's presented in the stomach region. You can really see it as I turn it there, but it looks quite nice. Nicely done detailing of the leg and musculature of the leg and everything. You really see some nice skin wrinkling and skin folding behind and in front of the leg. Really nice looking, and then again that tail runs out quite nicely. The tail may be a little bit too short, but overall it's not a half bad Giganotosaurus. It's not what you would get with Papo or Safari, Collect A, Rebo, or anything like that if they made one, but it's still not half bad. Then we've got the Dimetrodon, and the Dimetrodon actually looks quite nice in my opinion. The teeth appear to be painted pretty nicely. There's no real sloppiness or anything with them. I actually quite like them. The tongue in there is just a pinkish color, and again they only applied the paint on the top of the tongue, not to the sides, which this kind of has that same trademark thick style tongue that the other one had. The actual sculpting and detail of the head looks quite nice. You've got a nice nostril sculpted there, some very big thick scaling on the head. The eye appears to be painted really nicely, and once again has a gloss that actually makes it look quite real, which is a definite plus. The eyes don't seem to be placed perfectly as far as where the pupil goes, but they do still look quite nice, and there's no sloppiness as far as the eye paint because it hasn't missed the mark like a Mattel figure would or anything like that. It's perfectly placed in there, which is definitely a plus. The sculpt work and detail all around the eye looks really quite nice. Even the lower jaw sports some very nice looking large scales. And then you can see some wrinkling as we move down the neck, and this brownish coloration starts to mix with some black splotches kind of all over the place. Some beautiful looking hanging skin in the throat. And then you move down here into the legs, you can really see the nice skin wrinkling going on right here where the leg connects at the base of the leg, and then you can see the nice foot sculpt. Really looks quite nice. The nails, again, aren't really painted. They're just kind of given a blackish coloration at a certain point on the foot, similar to what we saw with the Giganotosaurus. You can really get a good idea of the very nice reptilian-looking scales as I turn this that are all over the Dimetrodon. I think that actually really makes it look quite cool. And the sail is just basically a darkish coloration. You kind of see some circles and some patterning going on with a black coloration, and then that burnt umber type brown that kind of loops around the entire sail with a lighter brown that is basically the main body color of the Dimetrodon there in the center. And I think it looks really nice, and I'm surprised that they've gone with such a dark coloration because more often than not, companies usually tend to make the sails of their Dimetrodons a much brighter coloration. So it's actually kind of a breath of fresh air for this to have such a dark look. I actually quite like it. You can see some more skin folds down here in the stomach, and then we move up into the leg. You can see some more wrinkling going on as far as the skin right here where the leg connects at the hip area. Nice kneecaps. We move down to the leg. The feet look just the same as they did on the front. Very nicely done. And then we can run out the length of this tail. It's not a super long tail, but probably a realistic length, I'd say, for a Dimetrodon tail. Maybe somewhere close to that range. And then this side also looks quite nice. You can again see some nice skin wrinkling here. The sail also looks quite beautiful on this side. It's actually really nicely detailed as far as the small details go inside the sail. Fairly impressive. Again, you can really see those nice, very reptilian scales. They almost look just like a lizard scales all over this side. Nice legs on this side as well. Sculpt work on those looks really, really good. And then the tail also looks nice. Even got some nice sculpt work on the underside. Beautiful looking, honestly. I actually really like this Dimetrodon. Then we've got the Stegosaurus, which I'm not too big of a fan of the coloration of. You can see that the actual sculpt, though, is pretty nice. The eye looks to be painted pretty nicely once again, and doesn't appear to be looking behind or anything this time, unlike the other two. It's kind of looking in a fairly realistic spot, it seems, but it's kind of a hard eye to see. It's fairly small. It does have a nice gloss, making it look really quite real, though. The actual detail of the beak looks nice as well. And the overall sculpting of the head is pretty darn good. I will say I'm fairly impressed with these figures. And then as we start to move into the neck, again, the detailing and sculpt work of the actual body details, it's not that great. It's not over the top awesome like you would see on some of the other companies out there, but considering this is a much cheaper set, it's surprising just how much sculpt is put into this. You can see the plates look really quite nice as well. Very nice sculpt work and detail included in those. You can take note of the shoulder blade here on the actual Stegosaurus as we move down into the leg. Nicely sculpted feet, and they seem to do this same thing with each figure where they just kind of change the coloration of the feet, so then they don't have to paint the nails as it just kind of darkens the feet. I'm okay with it. It does look pretty nice. Again, I'm not a big fan of the paint. I don't think this paint looks very realistic. It's not very naturally applied like the other two. It's kind of just splotchy and looks a lot more like paint than body color, which is a downside for this figure at least. You can see some nice wrinkling of the skin here in the stomach region, and as we move up you can take note of the hip bone there on the Stegosaurus. Some nice musculature here in this leg as well. We move down into the feet, again similar style where they just kind of paint the feet a darker coloration by the nails, so it can look kind of sloppy, but at the same time it doesn't look like it's sloppy on their part as it's meant to look that way, I think. Nicely sculpted plates up there on the top. Again, we run out the tail here. Nice looking tail. You can see the spikes have some pretty decent detail as well. The tail is much closer to the ground than it probably should be. It definitely looks like it's potentially dragging its tail or very close. It actually kind of reminds me of the Jurassic World Stegosaurus, as they have a similar look to this. But I really like the sculpt of the Stegosaurus, even with the dragging or almost dragging tail. I still think it looks really quite nice. It is obviously an outdated Stegosaurus sculpt, but it's closer to one of my favorite type of an appearance of the Stegosaurus, so in a way it's a plus for me. And then we can see the detailing on this side again, very nice skin wrinkling and skin folding here in the stomach. The legs also look to be really beautifully sculpted on this side. I love the detailing here, the wrinkles in the folds of the leg right here, the front leg. Same with the rear leg. You can again really take note of the musculature here in the thigh, and then you can move out the tail. Once again, it's more of like a purplish color, which is kind of an awkward looking color I think for a Stegosaurus. But overall, the sculpt itself is pretty nice. It's just the coloration I'm not a big fan of. And then what is probably the worst of the bunch is their Argentinosaurus, because it does not look at all like an Argentinosaurus to me. But if we take a look at the head sculpt, you can see the tongue is actually nicely painted in there. The teeth are present, and although they kind of look more like predator teeth than herbivore teeth, you can see that they are painted fairly nicely, and they're a more realistic, like off-white, yellowish type of a coloration. The eye, once again, is painted pretty nicely and has a nice gloss, but for some reason it is once again still looking behind. I don't know why. The actual head sculpt does sport some fairly nice detail, so the head looks pretty nice. As we move down the neck, you can see all sorts of very nice wrinkling of the skin, even on the underside. It's not overly detailed once again, but it still looks pretty nice. I actually like the paint scheme on this one a lot. It's really, really beautiful looking and very striking looking, honestly, even if the sculpt isn't so great. You can see all sorts of wrinkling in the skin as we get to the shoulder area, down into the upper part of the front leg. Very nice looking wrinkling as we run down the leg. Beautiful big sauropod feet that I don't think that's actually how the feet would look on this. I think there's a little too many nails and stuff, but regardless, they still look fairly nice for being a cheap figure. You can actually see the nice scaling all over the place on this, and the paint is impressively nice as far as the way it's applied. It does look very natural. Really looks nice as far as looking like body color. Nice wrinkling in the skin here, and skin folds in the lower part of the stomach. You come back here, you can again take note of some more wrinkling going on up here at the top of the thigh, where the hip would be. You can kind of take note of the hip bone, but it's not too well elaborated. Very large thigh muscles as we move down the body and down the leg. And again, the feet look pretty nice. They've done that same style of paint where they just put that black coloration all over it. And you can see some nice wrinkling here behind the leg and some skin folding. And then you run down the tail. The tail isn't very long. It's really quite short. It's definitely dragging on the ground, so it's a very outdated look. But it still isn't that bad. It does not look like an Argentinosaurus at all. I would say it looks like a very cool vintage Apatosaurus. And then looking at the opposing side, again, the head sculpt looks fairly nice. He's just kind of yelling in anger. And then we can see some nice skin folding and wrinkling as we run down the neck. Nice skin folds here in the shoulder area once again. And the actual skin texture here of the leg really looks quite nice. It really gives the feeling of a very large animal, similar to like an elephant, in my opinion. You can again take note of the sculpt work and detailing of the stomach. Again, the skin folding here and up above in the hip area. Very nice thigh muscles. And those nicely sculpted feet here in the back again. And then once again, the tail is dragging. It's not that great, and probably the weakest of the entire set. So as far as the size goes on these figures, we'll go with the Giganotosaurus. They're not super large, they're kind of smaller figures. But if we go from the head, the tip of the snout there, to the tail, you're looking at, about 6 3/4 inches, or about 17 centimeters in length for the Giganotosaurus. And then for the height, he fell over, he's got a drinking problem. For the height, you're looking at a little bit, about 3 1/4 inches, or about 8 centimeters. For the Argentinosaurus, from the tail to the head, it's about 8 inches or 20 centimeters. And for a height, you are looking at about 3.5 inches or about 9 centimeters. For the Dimetrodon, from the head to the tail, about 6.5 inches or about 16.5 centimeters. And for a height, the highest point would be the sail. You're looking at about 3 1/4 inches or about 8.5 centimeters. And for the Stegosaurus, from the head to the tail, again just about 6 3/4 inches, almost 7 inches, and about 17.5 centimeters. And for a height, once again, 3 inches or about 8 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, and you can see that he is a much larger figure than these smaller Kid Galaxy figures, but again, they're not terribly sized. They're definitely smaller figures, but they're fairly nicely detailed and look pretty good. But our Papo Rex buddy here is doing his best to give us an idea of the smaller stature of these figures. So these figures are kind of alright. They're not bad. They're fairly nicely detailed. They're not really highly detailed, but they're not bad as far as the detailing goes. I think they have just enough sculpt work to really make them kind of worthwhile and worth purchasing. And at the same time, the paint on some look really nice, the paint on the others not so much. I think the Giganotosaurus paint looks pretty good. It's not overly well done. It's not super flashy or anything, but it looks alright. I think the Stegosaurus paint looks pretty bad. I'm not a big fan of it. I definitely would have rathered a better paint scheme, and I think overall the paint on that one looks much more like paint than body color. The Dimetrodon looks very natural to me. I think the paint really looks quite nice and really beautifully applied on that one, and actually on the Argentinosaurus, which in my opinion is probably the best of the bunch as far as the paint application. I think it really looks beautiful on that and looks really natural and well done. A funny little story actually about that Argentinosaurus is if you follow the Mattel Twitter account, I believe is where they posted it, on April Fool's, they posted an image of a supposedly Mattel Apatosaurus, which they were releasing, but it was actually just an April Fool's joke, and they had used this actual figure for the figure in the image. So that's a little bit of a cool little trivia in case you were unaware. As far as the sculpts go, I think the Giganotosaurus looks pretty nice. It's, again, not the most scientifically accurate, as none of these figures really are. I think the Stegosaurus has a fun look to it, but the tail is very close to dragging on the ground, which is a downside in a way for that one. Again, that sculpt is very outdated, though. And with the Dimetrodon, I actually think is probably the best of the bunch. It's not bad looking at all, and really quite appealing in my opinion. But the Argentinosaurus is probably the worst. It does have the very vintage tail dragging on the ground and really doesn't look like an Argentinosaurus at all to me. But at the same time, it does have that very vintage appealing look to it, so that is a plus. These figures are fairly cool. I kind of like them. If you want to buy yours, again, I would say check your local K-Mart if you have one, and if not, maybe search for Kid Galaxy toys online on eBay. They might be on Amazon, I'm not sure. I was having a pretty hard time trying to find more of them, or even this set. I will try to link you guys in the description if you are interested in purchasing them to somewhere that is selling them, but again, I had a hard time trying to find them. I don't know if I'll be able to find them online or not. I will link you hopefully to somewhere, so check the description. If not, hopefully you'll stumble across them in one of the stores local to you, and please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.